Welcome back. I'm Joseph Hoffman, and in this lesson, we'll be working on adding the left hand to the B section of Musette in D. Let's come to the piano to get started. Today we're going to use what I call learning backward. And that sometimes can be helpful to learn the end of a section first and then work backward, especially if some of the biggest challenges are toward the end. And then the rest will feel easy and it will all feel like downhill from there. So let's go with this today. I want to start working on the left hand here in measure 17. Now, can you name this first note the left hand plays in measure 17? This bottom line of bass clef is ground G, so that first ledger line below has to be E. And we see these octave jumps from E to E, E to E. Now you try. Now we've done so many octave jumps in this piece, it would be tempting to think any big interval we see is obviously going to be an octave. But look at measure 18. What's this interval here? If you were in a hurry and being careless, you might say, oh, that must be an octave. But no, look, it's a line to a line. And an octave always is from a line to a space or a space to a line. But you see a line to a line interval, which can either be a third, a fifth, or a seventh. Wow, the composer throws in an interesting interval here, which is going to sound really cool, by the way. So we have these two octaves in measure 17 and then a seventh. Let's practice that a few times, okay? Play it with me starting in measure 17. We're going to go E, 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 D, and just stop there. So this note is so easy to miss. We want to really drill it in so we can't miss it, okay? Say it with me and play. E, 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 D. Now eventually we're going to play that staccato, but for now hold it so our thumb, it's like we're sending a message to our left-hand thumb. Thumb, don't forget that note, it's a D. Okay, try it with me again. We're going to start on the low E, go. E, 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 D. Remember thumb, that's a D. Good, one last time, go. E, 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 D. Good, now this time, let's make that D staccato. Okay, so it'll sound like this. E, 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 D. Now let's try it together. 1, 2, ready, go. E, 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 D. Now, once you get there, you'll notice it asks for a finger 3 on C. And you, of course, dear student, are thinking, C's must be C sharp because of our key signature. So finger 3 is going to come to C sharp. Then it asks for a 2 on D. Why? Because the next note we need in the next measure is an E, and we'll run out of fingers if we don't. So even though we started with finger 1 on D, we're going to kind of shift like this and kind of fall into that A major pentascale that our right hand also will be in at that same moment. Aha. Remember from our other lesson. Okay, so let's watch all that together. We have E, 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 D, C sharp, D, E. And it's so important that we get the fingering correct. Please don't get creative with your fingering. Trust me. When you get to a much higher level, I'll let you choose your own fingerings. But for now, please follow these and just trust that I've chosen the best fingering possible. Sometimes a fingering may work okay at a slow speed as you're learning it, but as we get faster, your fingers will get tripped up if you've trained the wrong fingering. Okay, so let's just work on this measure right here, measure 18, going to the first note of 19. 1 and 2 and 1. Now pause the video and work on that, I'd say 10 times, and then press play to go on. Okay, let's look all the way back to measure 17. We had 1 and 2 and 1. D, C sharp, D, E. Now we go on to A. D, da, da, dum, bum. That should sound familiar. Once we get there, the left hand's just playing the same notes that the right hand's playing. So, hands together, it will sound like this. But we're not ready for that yet. I'd like you, on your own, to work on measures 17 through 20, just left hand alone. 1, 2, and. So after that weird seventh that we talked about, and then that finger 3 on C sharp, for the rest of the line, our left hand is just going to sit in this A major pentascale. Okay? You don't have to move out of this position once you hit this C sharp. Okay? Pause the video and work on measures 17 through 20, then press play to go on. Now, backing up to measures 13 through 16, on this line, what is the left hand playing? Can you name this first note? This is an E, and what interval do you see? Is it an octave? Yes, you can see that it's E to E, and scan the whole line. Does the left hand ever change? Nope, we're playing E's the whole way. So this line, for the left hand anyway, will be pretty easy. It's going to be when you're playing it hands together that it gets a little tricky. But sounds so cool, huh? Now, let's back up to measure 9. What two notes is the left hand playing here on beat 1 of measure 9? Can you name them both? It's another octave, so we're going from A to A. Now, scan this line and tell me, does the left hand ever change? Aha, here at the last beat of measure 12, just when maybe you started to think nothing was going to change, we come down to an E, E on beat 2. And that makes this with the right hand. Sounds kind of cool there. Here's the whole line. We're staying on A in the left hand. Whoops. Okay, and then the left hand can stay there as we go into measure 13, because we've got all these E's in measure 13. Oh, and I've been forgetting to notice this piano marking. So just kind of tiptoeing along, then this crescendo. Now, you'll see that from measures 9 through that whole line until we shift down to this E, these two lines are going to be pretty easy for the left hand, right? Because it's just back and forth octaves. The challenge is going to be when you're ready to put it hands together, start really slowly at first. Now, where do you think will be the hardest part of that whole line? It's going to be here where the left hand has to shift while your right hand is shifting at the same time. Notice we've got, at the same time your left hand is shifting down, your right hand also has to come down to this B, E. So here's where I would use the practice technique I call zooming in. You're going to zoom in your practice to just that one measure and do it over and over and over again. Maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe 20 times. Really slowly at first, maybe even slower than that. Think about every note. If you miss a note, go even slower. Okay, go so slow you can't miss a note. And then gradually speed it up. Maybe 15 times, maybe 20, maybe 25. But again, if you're missing a note every time, you're going too fast. Slow it down. So slow you can't miss a note. And then speed it up. Okay, so pause the video and I'd like you to do some zoom in practice here on measure 12, hands together. First, just review the right hand once. Make sure you remember those notes. If you can't do it hands alone, you'll never get it hands together. So try both hands alone a couple times. Make sure you're comfortable with both. And then, super slow motion, and try it at least 10 times and then press play to go on. Another section I recommend zoom in practice is right here at measure 18, beat 1. Here this is, in my experience teaching this to students, this measure is maybe the trickiest measure in the whole piece. Because the right hand has this thumb coming under, your left hand has that weird seventh. There's a lot happening all at once. But it's your job as the pianist to make the hard parts sound easy. If you practice them enough, you'll make the hard parts sound easy by how well you play it. So just try the right hand once here in measure 18. Just the first two notes, E down to G sharp with finger 5, 2. Now you try. Good, now remember those two notes. Now what's the left hand doing? We have E up to D. Now you try. Now let's put those two together. Do that like 5 times. Keep doing it with me. Just E to D in the left hand, E to G sharp in the right hand. Make sure you can do that like in your sleep. Okay? Now let's add one more note. The right hand will be, we've got E, G sharp, A. Now you try. Good, and the left hand will be E, D, C sharp. And they're all staccato. Now you try. Fingering is very important. 5, 1, 3. Now you try. Good. Try the right hand again. E, G sharp, A. Now you try. Together in super slow motion. Now the fingering is so important here. The right hand's going to land finger 1 on A, while the left hand finger 3 lands on C sharp. And both hands are in an A major pentascale, but the right hand on A, the left hand on C sharp. Just try that note all by itself. That's kind of our target note for this little pattern here. Now let's go back. We have boom, boom, boom. Okay, notice how we landed on a C sharp and an A there. Now pause the video and I want you to do that little section of 3 notes many, many times and then press play and we'll add a little more. Now let's add one more note to that. Then we have, so again, we're gradually zooming out. We have in the right hand 1 and 2 and. Our finger 4 lands on that D. 1 and 2 and. You try. And the left hand is E, D, C sharp, D with finger 5, 1, 3, 2. Now you try. Then together in super slow motion, 1 and 2 and. Okay, once again, I'm going to have you pause the video and just work on that section 5 times. Very, very slowly at first, thinking about the fingering. If you need to do a couple more times hands alone, that can be helpful. And then go back to hands together until you feel like you're starting to get the hang of it. Then press play to go on. So that's how you're going to work on this hands together. Doing little short segments and then zooming out. Anytime you hit a section where you're struggling, you're going to stop and zoom in right there. Don't think you're going to fix it by going back to the start of the piece and just starting over again. That's a waste of time. Zoom in on the problem area and make the hard parts sound easy by how carefully and thoroughly you practice them. Now, if you feel like you're not quite ready for hands together, that's fine. Take another week to just do hands alone, maybe a few more days hands alone. When the hands separate are very confident, then little by little work on adding it hands together, very, very slowly at first, until you build up to full performance speed. Now that you know all the individual sections of this piece, let's look at how all of those parts fit together. This section that we learned earlier from measures 1 through 8, I would call the A section of this piece. It has that main theme. And that section repeats. So we could say the A section of this piece repeats. Then, starting in measure 9, we get something new. It's a contrasting section. So I would call that the B section. In fact, I'm going to include all the way to this repeat sign, even though the A section, it sounds like it might be coming back here. Because these repeat signs frame all of that, we're going to call this one long B section. And I'm going to put a little A over here to indicate that the A theme does come back, but it's kind of inside this longer B section. Now, if we had just an A and a B, and that B repeated, we'd call that binary form. When there's part or all of the A section that is included in this longer B section, then that's called technically rounded binary form. But in a nutshell, binary form is just when you have one section that repeats and then something different that repeats. It's a common form used in the Baroque period. As you're performing this piece, it can be helpful to think where you are in these very simple terms. You're going to play that A section, you're going to do it again. Then you're going to play the B section, then we hear A again, and we go back and repeat the B section with hearing that A section one last time. Often in rounded binary, this is some shortened version of A. But in this piece, it happens to be the entire 8 measures that we originally heard as A. And that's rounded binary form. Now that we're getting to longer pieces of music, I strongly encourage you to train yourself to practice in sections. It's very tempting to always practice by starting at the beginning of the piece. But often in a piece, the beginning isn't the most difficult part. So every time you start at the beginning, in a way, you're wasting some of your practice time if you've already mastered the beginning. And a lot of times, I hear students just really rocking at this A section, and then when they get to suddenly they go into super slow motion, which tells me they haven't spent enough time in the hard sections. Trust me, you're going to master the A section much faster than you master the B section. So how do you solve that? You need to practice the B section many, many more times than the A section. And how do you do that? You should start your practice with the hard parts. Start right in the middle of the piece. If yesterday in your practice you knew that you had a hard time here, if you started messing up there, start right there and do it. Challenge yourself to do it 10 times in a row. Well, that's kind of brutal. 10 in a row. Perfect is really brutal. But if you could do it, let's say 3 times in a row, no missed notes for one short section. I'm not talking about the whole piece, no missed notes. Okay? Missed notes are going to happen, but if you want to master something, choose a very short section and challenge yourself to get it 3 in a row, no missed notes. If you can't do that, you're playing it too fast or you're doing too big of a section. Choose a very short section. Say, hey, can I just get measure 18, no missed notes? See if you can do that 10 times. Or 3 in a row or 5 in a row. Perfect with no missed notes. Once you have all the little sections worked out, sometimes doing right hand alone, sometimes left hand alone, sometimes hands together, should do a combination of all 3, then start working with metronome. Maybe start nice and slow at, here's 84. I'm going to skip to the B section. What will happen with your metronome practice is you'll be going along and you'll discover which sections you can't play at the speed you're attempting with the metronome. So that's a clue to stop and zoom in on those sections. Metronome's a great tool to make sure from the beginning to the end all the sections are consistent at the same speed. The target speed that you may be going for, again, this may take weeks to get there, but go for somewhere between 160 and 184. 184 sounds like this. Takes careful, diligent practice to get to that speed. Great work learning how to play the B section of Musette in D hands together. To master this piece and to play it confidently, I hope you'll practice carefully and using smart practice strategies every day. Once you feel proud of your performance, please share it with a friend or share it with me online. Thanks so much for watching and happy practicing. I know. Let's ask Mr. Hoffman what he thinks Bach's favorite movie was. Good idea. Hey, Mr. Hoffman. Yes? What do you think Bach's favorite movie was? Bach's favorite movie? How about Unbaroken? Get it? Baroque-in? Well, high points for creativity. Come Bach for more anytime. Yeah, we'll get back to you later. Oh.